cast out from the Galactic Institute for his radical theories on cosmic interconnectedness, then dragged back into the gilded cage of its deadly entertainment. Dr. Aris Thorne found himself shackled not only by the chains of his past, but to a shimmering alien whose silent, intricate mathematics seemed the only key to surviving the cacophony of the Echo-Labyrinth, a televised bloodsport where only the echoes and the desperate found their way. The air in the pre-launch chamber was thick with the scent of ozone, fear, and the sterile tang of recycled atmosphere. Aris, his astrophysicist's mind, usually lost in the elegant dance of nebulae, felt crushingly grounded. He was a condemned man, his sentence commuted to participation in this grotesque spectacle. His gaze fell upon his unwilling partner, Lyra of the Kai-lar. Her skin was a marvel, like polished iridescent obsidian, shifting through hues of amethyst, emerald, and sapphire with the subtle alterations in ambient temperature, and he suspected her internal state. She stood perfectly still, her multifaceted eyes, like geodes, fixed on some point beyond the plasteel walls, her slender, metallic fingers tracing unseen geometric patterns in the air. Her people, the Kai-lar, revered age above all else. Wisdom was measured in centuries, not insights. Lyra, he'd been told, was young, yet her designation was crystal mystic, a title that hinted at depths the game masters clearly hoped would make for good television. A low thrum vibrated through the deck plating, the first signal that their ordeal was about to begin. The announcer's voice, an oily blend of false bonhomie and sadistic glee, boomed through hidden speakers. Contestants Aris Thorne, the disgraced stargazer, and Lyra, the Kai-lar enigma. An unlikely pair, wouldn't you say, folks? Let's see if his philosophy can find a pattern in the chaos, or if her alien mysteries can divine a path through the shifting silence of the Echo-Labyrinth. A jolt threw them forward as their transport pod detached and was propelled into the inky blackness of the labyrinth's entrance. Darkness absolute, then a series of sharp clicks from emitters embedded in the walls, the only guide. The game was simple, brutally so. Navigate a vast, constantly reconfiguring maze using only echolocation. Teams were meant to generate their own sounds, calls, clicks, taps, and interpret the returning echoes to map their surroundings. But the labyrinth was also designed to distort, to mislead, to break. We need to coordinate, Aris said, his voice low. He tried to keep the tremor out of it. A consistent series of sounds. I'll start with a sequence of 3 short bursts. He tapped his knuckles against the metal shackle connecting his wrist to Lyra's. Lyra turned her head slowly, her geode eyes focusing on him. Her skin shimmered, a wave of cool blues washing over the warmer violets. Your sounds are blunt, she stated, her voice a series of melodic resonances like wind chimes tuned to an alien scale. The Kai-lar use harmonic pulses. More data, harmonic pulses it is. Then Aris conceded, already feeling the weight of her cultural certainty. But we need to agree on a baseline. And we need to move. The labyrinth doesn't wait. He took a hesitant step, pulling slightly on their shared chain. The labyrinth responded with a low, groaning shift of unseen walls far ahead. Echoes, faint and distorted, whispered back. Lyra closed her eyes. Her breathing became almost imperceptible. A low, complex hum emanated from her, a sound so intricate Aris felt it more than heard it, a vibration in his bones that resonated with the strange geometry of the labyrinth itself. The hum shifted, a cascade of notes, and then she spoke, her voice still calm but with an underlying tension. The passage to our left is constricting. The right offers a wider corridor, but the echo returns fragmented. A possible trap, or multiple smaller passages. How do you? Aris began, but she was already moving, her steps surprisingly sure-footed in the pitch black, pulling him along. He stumbled, relying on the faint tug of the chain. Her hum continued, a constant stream of sonic information that she seemed to process with uncanny speed. He tried to supplement it with his own cruder clicks, listening intently to the returning pings. The air was cold, carrying the scent of dust and something metallic, something ancient. They navigated for what felt like hours. The silence between their soundings was oppressive, filled only with the drip of unseen condensation and the distant, unsettling shifts of the labyrinth's architecture. Aris found himself contemplating the nature of their confinement. Was it a metaphor for the universe itself? A vast, unknowable structure one could only navigate by sending out probes of inquiry, interpreting the faint replies. Lyra seemed less troubled by the existential implications, more focused on the immediate, complex problem before them. Her skin occasionally flared with a brief, intense light, usually when a path seemed to abruptly dead end, only for a new echo, a new possibility, to emerge just as they were about to despair. He wondered if it was just the way her biology reacted to stress, or something more. Suddenly, a screeching cacophony of noise erupted from their right, followed by the unmistakable thud of a heavy object and a guttural roar. Other contestants. Aris breathed, his hand instinctively going to the small, rudimentary metal bar they'd been given as a token weapon. Lyra's humming intensified, becoming sharper, more urgent. 3 entities. Aggressive, they have detected our pulses. Her skin flushed a deep, warning crimson. They are closing. Before Aris could suggest a course of action, a section of the wall to their left hissed and slid open, revealing a narrow, descending passage. It hadn't been there moments before. An echo from Lyra's last complex hum seemed to have resonated with it. Or was it coincidence? This way, she urged, her voice tight, pulling him towards the unexpected opening. The probability of survival is marginally higher. Probability. An odd choice of word for a mystic. They scrambled down the passage, the sounds of pursuit growing louder behind them. The tunnel twisted, turned, and then Aris felt Lyra halt so abruptly he cannoned into her back. Her metallic skin was surprisingly warm. Dead end, she whispered. The passage ahead was solid rock, the echoes flat and final. The sounds of their pursuers were close now, echoing in the confined space. Aris's mind raced. His philosophical musings evaporated, replaced by a primal urge to survive. There has to be another way. Think, Lyra, your mathematics, your patterns. Lyra closed her eyes, her body rigid with concentration. Her skin began to pulse with a soft internal luminescence, cycling through the spectrum. She was humming again, but this time it was a single, incredibly pure note that seemed to make the very air vibrate. Aris felt a strange tingling sensation, as if the atoms around them were buzzing. The rock face in front of them shimmered. For a microsecond he thought he saw through it, a faint network of light beyond. Then it was solid again. But a hairline crack appeared, then another, spreading like a spiderweb. With a grating groan, a section of the rock, no bigger than a manhole cover, slid inwards. Quickly, Lyra gasped, the light from her skin dimming, her body slumping slightly against him. The effort had clearly cost her. They squeezed through the opening just as their pursuers rounded the bend, bestial snarls echoing behind them. Aris pulled the rock slab shut. It wasn't a perfect seal, but it would buy them time. They found themselves in a small, natural cavern. In the center, illuminated by phosphorescent fungi, lay 2 figures. One was a hulking, reptilian creature, clearly dead, its chest plate smashed. The other was a small, bird-like alien, its feathery wing bent at an unnatural angle, chirping in pain. Its companion, a Colossian with 4 arms, was desperately trying to tend to the wound, its multiple eyes wide with fear. The Colossian looked up, startled. Please. It chittered, don't harm us. We are no threat. This was their turning point, though Aris didn't know it then. The unspoken rule of the Echo-Labyrinth was survival of the fittest. Helping others was a weakness, a sentiment the game masters would surely punish. He looked at Lyra. Her iridescent skin was now a mottled gray, the color of uncertainty. The rules of this game? Aris said slowly, his gaze on the injured avian, would dictate we leave them. Or worse. Lyra's multifaceted eyes studied the small, whimpering creature. The avian was old, its feathers faded, its beak chipped. Among my people, Lyra said, her voice quiet but firm, her resonant tones filling the small cavern. The eldest are the keepers of wisdom. Their experiences are texts written in time. To abandon such a one is to discard a library. A library that could get us killed. Aris countered, though his own conscience pricked him. The creature's suffering was palpable. They're injured. They'll slow us down. And if the game masters see us aiding another team, the equations of compassion are not always logical in their initial variables. Lyra stated, her gaze unwavering. But their ultimate solutions often reveal a deeper order. She took a step towards the injured pair. What is your designation, Elder? She asked the avian, her voice softening, a new timbre Aris hadn't heard before. The avian chirped weakly. Chircall, it managed. And this is my nestling Plix. Plix, the Colossian, looked between Aris and Lyra, hope warring with fear on its expressive face. Chircall knows many pathways of the old labyrinth, the parts they say no longer exist. But, its wing. Aris felt a surge of something complex. Frustration at the predicament, a grudging admiration for Lyra's unwavering stance, and a deep-seated human instinct to help. His philosophical mind wrestled with it. What was true strength, ruthless self-preservation, or the courage to act on one's convictions even at great cost? The labyrinth is shifting, he said. Any knowledge Churkal has might be outdated, and we're still being hunted. Probability is not destiny. Lyra murmured, her attention fixed on Churkal. Sometimes, a focused intention can alter the flow of events. She knelt, her metallic fingers gently probing near the broken wing. Her skin pulsed with a soft, warm amber light. This requires stabilization. The moral choice hung heavy in the air. Aris looked at the desperate hope in Plix's eyes, at the quiet dignity of the injured Churkal, and then at Lyra, whose alien morality was proving to be far more nuanced than he'd anticipated. His own past, his own status as an outcast who had once sought understanding and been met with derision, resonated with the plight of these strangers. All right. Aris sighed, the decision solidifying. We help them. But we need to be smart about it. Plix, what resources do you have? The Xyloshian fumbled in a pouch, producing a small med kit. Limited. Very limited. Lyra was already murmuring complex Kai-lar phrases, her hands hovering over Churkal's wing. The amber glow from her skin intensified, and Aris could have sworn he saw the subtle tremor in the bird's wing lessen. Was this part of her mystic abilities, or just advanced Kai-lar medical knowledge? Their decision, however, did not go unnoticed. A harsh, amplified voice suddenly echoed through the cavern, clearly a broadcast from the game masters, contestants Thorne and Lyra, demonstrating a surprising and frankly, rule-breaking display of altruism. Such sentimentality will surely have consequences in the Echo-Labyrinth. Perhaps a little environmental adjustment is in order to remind you of the stakes. The ground beneath them trembled violently. The phosphorescent fungi flickered and died, plunging them into near total darkness, save for the faint, residual glow from Lyra's skin. The sound of grinding rock filled the air, and dust rained down from the ceiling. The cavern is collapsing. Plix shrieked. Churkal, is there another way out? Aris yelled over the din, grabbing Lyra's arm to steady her. The chain between them, once a symbol of their forced partnership, now felt like a lifeline. The old avian, despite its pain, chirped urgently. Yes, an old ventilation shaft hidden behind the crystal formation. Lyra, her skin now shining with a focused, silvery light, scanned the cavern walls. Her humming resumed, sharper and more directional than before. There, she exclaimed, pointing to a section of the wall where faint, crystalline veins pulsed with a dim light. The structure is different there. Less dense. Working together, with Plix's multiple arms and Aris's strength, they managed to dislodge a large crystal, revealing a dark, narrow opening. The cavern was groaning around them, threatening to crush them. Go, Aris urged, pushing Plix and a carefully supported Churkal towards the opening. Lyra followed, her light essential for their passage. Aris brought up the rear, keenly aware of the pursuing echoes of both their former hunters and the labyrinth itself, now actively hostile. They were forced into even closer proximity, crawling through suffocatingly tight tunnels, their survival utterly dependent on Lyra's strange senses and Churkal's fading memories of ancient pathways. The game masters had, ironically, forged a stronger bond between them through their punishment. Respect, born from that difficult moral choice and shared peril, began to bloom in the darkness. The escape from the collapsing cavern led them into a section of the labyrinth that felt older, colder, and eerily silent. The usual clicks and whirs of shifting architecture were absent here. Churkal, carefully cradled by Plix, directed them through passages that didn't seem to exist on any logical map Aris could conceive. Lyra's humming was their constant guide, her skin a mobile beacon in the oppressive darkness. She moved with a fluid grace that belied the metallic nature of her form, her senses preternaturally sharp. This place, it feels different. Aris murmured, his voice hoarse from dust and exertion. The echoes are clearer, less distorted. The resonant frequencies are more stable here, Lyra explained, her head tilted as if listening to something beyond their perception. The geometry is ancient, less prone to artificial manipulation. She paused, her iridescent skin pulsing with a soft, contemplative blue. My people believe that certain complex mathematical equations and geometric patterns hold existential truths. We meditate upon them for enlightenment. This labyrinth, it is a perversion of such sacred geometry, yet even in its corruption, traces of the original harmony remain. Aris, the astrophysicist, was fascinated. You see mathematics as a spiritual path, Mathematics is the language of creation, Lyra replied. The universe sings in equations. To understand them is to understand the song. Her gaze met his, and for a moment, the cultural chasm between them seemed to shrink. Your own field, astrophysics, does it not seek to decipher these cosmic notations? It does, Aris admitted, a warmth spreading through him that had nothing to do with their exertion, though we often lack the poetry your people ascribe to it. He found himself watching the play of light across her skin, the subtle shifts in color that seemed to mirror her thoughts. Her earlier display of what he could only describe as localized probability manipulation, the wall opening, the slight easing of Churkall's pain replayed in his mind. This was no ordinary alien. Their forced cooperation bred a fragile trust. They shared their meager rations nutrient paste for Aris and Plix, while Lyra seemed to draw sustenance from ambient energy, her skin absorbing the faint light from glowing mosses they occasionally passed. Churkall, despite its frailty, proved invaluable. Its knowledge of these forgotten ways, combined with Lyra's unique echolocation, allowed them to evade several dead ends and potential traps, left by whatever ancient civilization had first carved these tunnels. One evening, huddled in a slightly wider alcove for rest, Aris watched Lyra as she sat in a meditative posture, her fingers tracing complex, glowing patterns in the air before her. The patterns resembled intricate star charts, or perhaps the subatomic structures he'd once theorized about. "What are you doing?" he asked softly. "I am observing the potential pathways," Lyra said, her eyes closed, focusing on the desired outcome. Sometimes the act of focused observation can nudge the probabilities. She opened her eyes, the geo-depths seeming to hold ancient starlight. "My people call it Kai-lar, the gentle shaping. It is rare, and often misunderstood." Misunderstood how? A flicker of something akin to sadness crossed her features, her skin momentarily dimming to a muted gray. "Wisdom, in Cathar society, is synonymous with age. I am young. My Kai-lar abilities are seen by some elders as aberrant, an unpredictable anomaly rather than a gift. My insights, derived from these observations, are often dismissed in favor of pronouncements rooted in centuries of unchanged tradition, even when logic suggests otherwise." Aris felt a pang of empathy. "So, you're an outcast too, in a way." Lyra considered this. "Perhaps. I seek truth in the flow of probabilities, in the emergent patterns of the now. Many of my elders seek it only in the echoes of the past." She looked at him. "You were cast out for your theories, were you not? Theories that explored unconventional connections in the cosmos." Aris nodded, surprised she knew or had inferred this. "I proposed that certain regions of space, exhibiting unique quantum signatures, might be nexuses, points where realities could intersect or influence one another. It was deemed heretical, too philosophical, not enough hard data for the Institute. And now," Lyra said, a faint, almost imperceptible smile gracing her lips, "we find ourselves in a place that hums with such intersections, guided by a mystic who nudges probabilities. The universe has a curious way of affirming its truths. During one treacherous crossing over a chasm, bridged only by a crumbling stone arch, Aris slipped. His foot dislodged loose scree, and he found himself dangling, his grip on the rough stone failing. Lyra, reacting with astonishing speed, grabbed his arm. Her grip was like steel, yet her skin, where it contacted his, suddenly blazed with an intense heat that was not unpleasant, but startlingly powerful. For a heartbeat, the chasm below seemed to ripple, the darkness momentarily less absolute. With a strength that belied her slender frame, she hauled him back to safety. Panting, Aris lay on the ledge. "Thank you," he gasped. "Your skin, it was incredibly hot." Lyra flexed her fingers, her skin returning to its usual cool luminescence, focused energy, a biological response to extreme exertion or intense concentration. She did not meet his eyes. "It is part of my nature." The incident, though terrifying, brought them closer. The physical contact, the shared vulnerability, chipped away more of the barriers between them. Later, as they rested, Aris found himself studying the intricate patterns of her skin, the way the iridescent colors swirled and blended. It was like watching a living nebula. He reached out hesitantly and traced a glowing line on her forearm with his fingertip. She didn't pull away. Instead, her skin warmed slightly under his touch, the colors brightening. "Your biology is remarkable," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Yours is equally perplexing," Lyra replied, her multifaceted eyes fixed on his. "So fragile, yet so resilient. So driven by emotion, yet capable of profound logic. A comfortable silence settled between them, filled with unspoken understanding. The romantic tension, once a faint undercurrent, was now a palpable force, drawing them together despite the dangers that surrounded them. Churkal, who had been listening with half-closed eyes, let out a soft, contented chirp. Plix, usually skittish, seemed to relax in their presence. This small, disparate group, forged in the crucible of the labyrinth, was becoming something more than just allies of convenience. They were becoming a unit, a strange, interstellar family. Their relative peace in the ancient tunnels was shattered when a new, terrifying sound began to echo from the depths behind them, a deep, guttural growl that resonated in their chests, so powerful it seemed to shake the very stone. It was not the sound of labyrinth mechanics, nor of any contestant they had yet encountered. Churkal, agitated, began to chirp frantically. The worm, it rasped, its small body trembling. The Chronovore Wyrm! It guards these old ways! It senses the Nexus. Nexus. Aris looked at Lyra, whose skin had turned to stark, warning silver. Like the Nexuses I theorized about. Lyra nodded, her expression grim. This labyrinth, or at least its core, is built upon such a point. A place where the veils between realities are thin. Churkal speaks of an ancient predator, a being that feeds on temporal energies, drawn to such locations. Her geode eyes were wide with a dawning horror. And I believe I am a Nexus point myself, or at least resonate strongly with them. My Kai-lar, my ability to sense probabilities, it's strongest near these confluences. The worm, it might be hunting me. The stakes had just escalated exponentially. It was no longer just about surviving a game. They were being hunted by a cosmic predator, and Lyra was its target. The knowledge that the Chronovore Wyrm was seeking to find and control this nexus of realities sent a chill down Aris's spine. Such power in the wrong hands or claws was unthinkable. We need to move fast, Aris said, his mind already calculating escape routes, defenses. Churkal, Plix, can you keep up? Plix, though terrified, nodded resolutely. We will not slow you. Churkal says there is a data node nearby, an ancient access point to the old galactic network. It might offer a way out, or at least information. Their flight became desperate. The worm's roars grew closer, accompanied by the sound of immense claws scrabbling on stone, and a terrifying pressure that seemed to warp the air around them. Lyra was pushing herself to the limit, her skin blazing with focused energy as she navigated, her Kai-lar abilities subtly shifting loose rocks to create minor impediments for their pursuer, deflecting falling debris that would have crushed them. During a brief respite in a slightly larger chamber, where a faint, pulsing light emanated from a crystalline shard embedded in the wall, Lyra stumbled, her light dimming. Aris caught her, his concern overriding his fear. You're pushing yourself too hard, he said, his voice gentle. The worm, its presence distorts the probabilities, makes it harder to see to shape. She gasped, leaning against him. Her metallic skin was cool now, almost cold, and the iridescence was muted. It consumes order. He held her, feeling the slight tremor in her body. In that moment, facing a terrifying, ancient predator, their shared humanity, or perhaps their shared sentient beingness eclipsed all differences. He looked into her multifaceted eyes, seeing not an alien, but a courageous, extraordinary individual he was rapidly falling in love with. We'll face it together, he said, his voice firm. He brushed a stray strand of what looked like spun moonlight from her brow. Your equations and my philosophy will find a way. Lyra's gaze softened. A faint warmth returned to her skin where it touched his. I have studied the patterns of your species' emotional bonding, she said, her voice a low thrum. It is illogical, yet undeniably powerful. Sometimes the illogical is the only thing that makes sense, Aris replied, his own heart aching with a feeling he hadn't allowed himself in years. Before them, the crystalline shard pulsed, and ancient symbols began to glow upon its surface. Churkal let out an excited chirp. The node? This is it. It speaks of the Lost Chord. The Lost Chord. Aris echoed, intrigued. A legend. Lyra breathed, her eyes fixed on the symbols. A sound of immense power, said to have been part of the universe's creation. A resonance that can shape reality itself. She looked at Aris, a new understanding dawning. My Kai-lar is a faint echo of this. The Nexus amplifies it. The worm seeks the Nexus to control this power, or perhaps consume it. The chamber suddenly shook violently. A section of the ceiling collapsed, showering them with debris. The Chronovore Wyrm was close. There's no time for deciphering legends now, Aris yelled, pulling Lyra towards a narrow fissure Plix had spotted. "We need to get out of its reach." They squeezed through, emerging into a vast, cavernous space unlike anything they had seen. It wasn't natural rock, but a colossal, seemingly artificial structure, lines of energy pulsing along its walls like a giant circuit board. In the center, a swirling vortex of light and shadow roiled the nexus of realities itself, raw and untamed. And before it, colossal and terrifying, was the Chronovore Wyrm. It was a creature of nightmare and awe, easily hundreds of meters long, its scales like shattered obsidian, its eyes burning with ancient malice. It wasn't merely physical, it seemed to flicker in and out of phase, its form distorting reality around it. It turned its massive head, its gaze locking onto Lyra. A wave of psychic pressure washed over them, filled with hunger and a desire for absolute dominion. "It knows," Lyra whispered, her body tensing. "It knows I can interact with the Nexus." This was it. No more running. Aris looked at Lyra, her form shimmering with a defiant light despite the overwhelming presence of the worm. He saw not fear, but a profound resolve. He took her hand, their fingers lacing together, metal and flesh. "Then let's give it a song it will never forget," Aris said, his voice filled with a conviction that surprised even himself. His philosophical understanding of the universe, her mystic connection to its fundamental patterns, their bond forged in fire and darkness, this was their only weapon. The worm let out a roar that fractured the very air, unleashing a wave of distorted temporal energy. Plix and Churkal cried out, huddling behind a jutting piece of crystalline wreckage. Aris felt a sickening lurch, as if his own timeline was trying to unravel. But Lyra squeezed his hand, her skin suddenly blazing with an intense, white gold light. The disorienting effect lessened around them, a small bubble of stability in the chaos. "The Lost Chord," Lyra said, her voice resonating with newfound power, her eyes fixed on the swirling nexus. "It's not just a sound, Aris. It's a resonance. A harmony with the fundamental structure of existence. I can feel it. I can almost sing it." Her body began to vibrate, a low, powerful hum emanating from her that Aris felt in his very soul. The ancient symbols from the data node flashed in her mind. No longer just abstract patterns, but a roadmap to this ultimate frequency. "Then sing, Lyra," Aris urged, his gaze sweeping their surroundings. The vast chamber was like the inside of a malfunctioning supercomputer, energy conduits sparking, gravitic fields fluctuating. "I'll keep that overgrown lizard busy." He had no illusions about his chances against the Chronovore Wyrm in a direct confrontation. But he was an astrophysicist. He understood energy fields resonance. "Plix," that data node Churkal mentioned, the one that gave us the Lost Chord information. "Is there a way to interface with this chamber's systems? Overload something? Create a distraction?" Plix, overcoming its fear, scurried towards a flickering console nearby. "Perhaps. These systems are ancient, but the energy flow is immense." The worm, impatient, lunged, its massive claws slicing through the space where they'd stood moments before. Aris pulled Lyra behind a larger crystalline outcrop. "Focus, Lyra! Find that cord." Lyra closed her eyes, her entire being concentrated on the Nexus. The hum emanating from her grew in complexity and power, intricate mathematical patterns weaving themselves into a symphony of pure energy. Her iridescent skin pulsed with every color of the spectrum, so bright it was hard to look at. Aris could feel the air around her thrumming, the very fabric of reality seeming to thin and shimmer. Her Kai-lar ability, her quantum observer effect, was being amplified 1,000-fold by her proximity to the Nexus and her attempt to channel the Lost Chord. Small objects around her began to float, dust motes danced in intricate geometric formations. The worm roared in frustration and unleashed another blast of temporal distortion. Aris felt his memories flicker, past and future blurring. He gritted his teeth, focusing on Lyra on the here and now. He had to protect her. He spotted a conduit carrying a massive flow of raw energy. If he could rupture it, direct it, Plix, that main conduit, can you create a feedback loop? "Trying." Plix chittered, its forehands flying across the ancient console. Sparks flew. Aris, meanwhile, used his knowledge of angles and trajectories. He grabbed a jagged piece of metallic debris, a remnant of the labyrinth's construction. The worm was focused on Lyra, sensing the immense power she was beginning to channel. It saw her as the primary threat, the key to its prize. This was Aris's chance. He hurled the debris with all his might, not at the worm itself, but at a delicate-looking crystalline regulator near the conduit Plix was working on. His aim, honed by years of calculating celestial mechanics, was true. The regulator shattered. The energy conduit beside it buckled, spewing a torrent of raw, uncontrolled power directly towards the worm's flank. The beast shrieked, a sound of pain and fury, as the energy seared its phased hide. It recoiled, momentarily distracted from Lyra. "Now, Lyra!" Aris yelled. Lyra's eyes snapped open. They were no longer multifaceted geodes, but pure, incandescent light. The hum reached an unbearable crescendo, then coalesced into a single, perfect, indescribable note, the Lost Chord. It was not sound as Aris knew it, but something far more fundamental. It was light, it was vibration, it was pure information. It was the resonance of creation itself, the chamber filled with an overwhelming sense of peace, of order, of absolute, unshakable truth. The Lost Chord washed over the Chronovore Wyrm. The creature writhed not in pain, but in dissolution. Its form, already unstable, flickered violently. The distorted temporal energies around it neutralized, smoothed out. The worm wasn't being destroyed, Aris realized, but realigned. Corrected. Its connection to this specific nexus, its unnatural tether to this point of intersecting realities, was being severed. With a final fading roar that sounded less like rage and more like a vast, cosmic sigh, the Chronovore Wyrm dissolved into shimmering particles of light, which were then drawn into the swirling vortex of the Nexus and dispersed. The chamber fell silent, save for the gentle, harmonious hum now emanating from the stabilized Nexus. Lyra swayed, the intense light receding from her eyes and skin, leaving her looking almost translucent, her normal iridescence slowly returning. Aris rushed to her side, catching her as her knees buckled. "Lyra, are you all right?" She leaned heavily against him, her breathing shallow. "The Chord, it passed through me," she whispered, a look of profound awe on her face. "It cleans the dissonance." Her skin, though pale, was warm against his. Plix and Churkal approached, their eyes wide with wonder. "You did it?" Plix stammered. "You saved us. You saved everything." Aris held Lyra close. The immediate crisis was over. The Nexus of realities pulsed steadily, a beacon of infinite possibility, now safe from the worm's corrupting influence. The labyrinth, its purpose perverted and its core threatened, felt strangely quiet, almost thankful. The game masters, wherever they were, would soon realize their grand spectacle had been catastrophically upstaged. Lyra slowly regained some strength, her inner light rekindling. She looked up at Aris, her geode eyes clear and filled with an emotion that mirrored his own. "Your blunt sounds, Aris Thorne," she said, a faint smile playing on her lips, "and your equally blunt courage. They provided the counterpoint to my melody." "And your melody, Lyra of Kai-lar," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "The most beautiful thing in this, or any, universe." He leaned down and kissed her, a kiss of shared triumph, of profound relief, and of a love that had been forged in the heart of chaos and resonated with the music of the stars. Her skin was warm, vibrant, humming with a gentle energy that enveloped him. There were no words needed to confirm what they both knew: their unexpected union, across the vastness of space and culture, had not only saved them, but had resonated far beyond this single nexus. They had faced the void and found not an ending, but a new, harmonious beginning. The wider galaxy did not immediately understand the full import of what had transpired in the forgotten depths of the Echo-Labyrinth. The Game Master's broadcast had abruptly cut off during the worm's attack, replaced by static, then silence. Rumors spread like wildfire: a catastrophic systems failure, an attack by unknown forces, the improbable survival of the disgraced stargazer, and the Kai-lar enigma. Official channels were tight-lipped, trying to contain the narrative, but Plix, utilizing the ancient data node, had managed to send out a fragmented burst of information enough to pique the interest of certain independent investigators, and, more importantly, the Galactic Institute's more open-minded factions, those who had secretly sympathized with Aris's earlier theories. In the immediate aftermath, Aris and Lyra, along with Plix and a recovering Churkal,